and welcome to day 12 of 2021's Shocktoberfest. I just realized something. In the last few years, we haven't done a Wes Craven film in a while. I think it's about time. I think it's about time to do something obscure. Not necessarily complete horror, but I mean, there's some suspense in there. We're going to talk about Wes Craven's 1991 The People Under the Stairs. This one gave me a lot of creeps when I was a kid because, I mean, at the time I was still a little bit scared of Freddy Krueger, and there were some characters in this movie that were kind of rotting away that kind of looked like him a little, so it kind of freaked me out a little bit, but I stuck with it back then. So we're going to talk into this movie real quick. So the story takes place in a very low-income residential area that a lot of people are being evicted from their homes because there is a couple that lives around the area that are known as the landlords that are pretty much upping the rent and upping all the prices on everything to try to get everybody out of the town to basically destroy all the buildings and have their own type of commercial area to make more money. Well, there's a young boy named Fool that's his name that he goes by, and his sister Ruby are trying to take care of their sick mother, and Ruby's boyfriend Leroy and his best friend Spencer are not necessarily the kindest people in the world. They decide they're going to break into the landlord's house and steal some of the specific treasure or gold that is supposedly underneath the house. So they decide to break into the house, and unfortunately for them, things don't go well for them at all. Let's see, Spencer gets abducted, he ends up getting ripped apart, and Leroy gets shot by Mr. Landlord, and Fool is stuck in the house, where he befriends a young girl named Alice that is allegedly their daughter, but it turns out she was abducted at one point. And she tells Fool the story about how they never had any kids of their own, and they kept abducting children, and any time that they were to talk back, the man and the woman would either cut off their tongue, cut out their eyes, or cut off their ears. The whole concept of see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. One particular character is named Roach, who crawls through the walls and escapes the stairs. And his tongue gets cut out because he said something bad back to Mr. Landlord at one point. Well, while Fool is trying to help Alice get out of the house, there's a lot of booby traps that are within the walls, down in the basement, and he finds Leroy's body getting carved up, and it turns out that Mr. and Mrs. Landlord are cannibals. Luckily for Fool, he escapes the house but needs to go back to find Alice, and he finds out from his grandfather that Mr. and Mrs. Landlord are not husband and wife, but brother and sister. Oof, it gets creepy. Well, Fool goes back to help Alice, and he sets up some booby traps of his own underneath the stairs. Alice eventually fights off the supposed mother, and the people under the stairs break out and rip her to shreds, while Fool triggers some wires together to set off a bomb and blows up Mr. Landlord, sending all the money out into the streets where the low-income residents are able to live happily ever after. That's pretty much the movie. I mean, it's an interesting film. I mean, for being a Wes Craven film, most of us are used to the stuff that we had watched prior to 1991. We had movies like Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, Nightmare on Elm Street, Swamp Thing. A lot of dark and disturbing imagery of the supernatural, and not just the supernatural, but the psychotic. And in this one, there is some psychological terror with these, cannibals, but I would say the violence is not as in-depth as it was prior to that. And I mean, come on, this was 1991, and where special effects were getting a lot more innovative. I mean, especially when it comes to Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984, those were innovative special effects even for that time. So the fact that they went a little less is more with this, I'd say it's a coin toss. I like it to the degree, but I think it's more or less, I like how they use the special effects more for booby traps than for any type of spectacle. So I'll just go with that. I also like the fact of the casting. I mean, it's a great ensemble cast. I mean, you have kind of the who's who of 80s, 90s actors. Let's see, we have Brandon Adams. Most people know him as, Jesse Hall from The Mighty Ducks, De Nunez from The Sandlot, and Zeke from Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. It's kind of crazy how, they had that happen, but you know what? being in Moonwalker definitely helped him get his start, and then being in Mighty Ducks and People Under the Stairs definitely helped his career at that time being a child actor. We also have Everett McGill and Wendy Roby, who were mainstays on the TV series Twin Peaks, and they're also great character actors. Everett McGill is basically the character actor of most action films, like the Under Siege series. He was also one of the main villains in License to Kill in the 007 series, and that's actually one of my favorite films, so that's definitely how I recognized him even as a kid. We also have AJ Langer, who would later be in John Carpenter's Escape from LA. We also have character actor Sean Whalen. A lot of people might have seen him in movies like Suicide Kings, or there's one thing that I remember him very fondly in was there was a milk commercial where he's eating a peanut butter sandwich and he's listening to the radio and tries to call to win the trivia question of who shot Alexander Hamilton. He keeps trying to say Aaron Burr, but he doesn't have enough milk to wash down the peanut butter. We also have Kelly Jo Minter, who is in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5 and also The Lost Boys. We also have character actor Bill Cobbs, that was in movies like The Bodyguard, Demolition Man, New Jack City. That's most of the ones that I remember him from, because being a kid in the 90s, that's just kind of the movies I remember watching and seeing him in. And of course, we cannot forget one of the other actors in this film. This was an early start for a young Ving Rhames. Later on, he would be Marcellus Wallace in Pulp Fiction. He was in so many movies. I mean, he was in the Mission Impossible series. He was also in the 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead. Scores of many other movies, and especially as of late, he has been the spokesperson for Arby's commercials. So hey, you know, y'all start somewhere, even if it is a very independent Wes Craven film from the early 90s. Can't really say that there's a lot that I don't like about this film. I mean, I know I say that a lot, but I mean, in this one, because I know I'm stammering. The fact that the landlords were not husband and wife, but brother and sister, I wouldn't say that this is something that I don't like, but I mean, the incestual situation regarding the two, it's not that I hate it, it's more or less, I don't like it because it's a disturbing concept, because the whole time you're watching them, you know, dancing around and being cute with each other, and they're calling each other mommy and daddy, and it just, even as a young kid, for me, watching that and figuring that out and putting two and two together, it's rather disturbing. And even to this day, I mean, I think it's more laughable than anything, but even back then, watching something like that happen was pretty disturbing. And yeah, now it's time to grade this film. Like I said, apart from that, you know, disturbing situation of the incestual villains of the landlords, I love the cast in this one. I like it because of the fact it's a step away from Wes Craven's normal style of horror, where there's just a lot of jump scares or things like that, or a lot of supernatural or psychological horror. This one is more or less a cat and mouse movie, where it's pretty much one big chase scene and trying to escape. And for Wes Craven doing that, I like that. I tip my hat to the late legend. This one, I'm going to give this one an A-, because it was different for its time, and especially, during the early 90s, there was quite an urban trend going on. I mean, movies directed by, like, Mario Van Peebles, and even Spike Lee. The fact that Wes Craven was doing more of an urban joint type film, that was ahead of its time. And you know what? I commend him for that. The movie necessarily hasn't aged well in some aspects, but I will say the story definitely, you know, can hold the test of time. And if they even, I mean, I'm not a big fan of remakes, but at the same time, it could be interesting if they decided to do one. I mean, honestly, I'm not a fan of remakes, but I could see this one being remade, and you know what? It'd probably hold up. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure that you leave a thumbs up. Hey, leave a thumbs down if you didn't agree with some of the opinions I had on this review. Also, make sure you share on social media, and as always, push that little red button, and don't forget to ring the bell for instant notifications on Dragonfire Entertainment. Other than that, I'm Wildman Wes. Tomorrow is day 13. Normally 13's an unlucky number, but we'll see if it's lucky or unlucky with the movie that we do select. Until then, I'm Wildman Wes, and we will see you next time. Stay tuned, and as always, stay scared.